Tighten up, leaders. Welcome to the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership, the show that drills into the foundations of what leadership is all about. I'm your producer and co-host, Hali Gibson.
And I'm your host, Billy Duren.
Join us as we sit down with leaders from across the country to mine for nuggets of wisdom.
All right, everyone, welcome into the meeting room. And today we're going to be talking about leadership because this is the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast. I'm the host, Billy Duren. I want to welcome in our producer and co-host, Hali Gibson. Hali, welcome back to the meeting room.
Great to be here.
Now, Hali, we've been talking about what your wisdom nugget is. Now I'm going to change the game on you here. What's your wisdom observation of the week? And then give us some conclusions. Nuggets are just not observed. Mm-hmm. We observe things, and then we conclude and come away with leadership nuggets. So tell me what you've seen this week that got your attention.
Well, I'll tell you what I saw this morning, actually. So we have with us Rachel, who's our wonderful guest today. And we talked about how you sent over the questions to Rachel late last night, early this morning, and actually used the wrong name. And we talked a little bit about that this morning. And I know you were upset that, you made that mistake. But when you walked out of the office, I said, it's going to happen again. Because it will happen again. And one of the things that I have to teach myself is if I make a mistake, I don't need to be even more upset the next time I make that mistake, because it truly is going to happen again. And so you don't need to beat yourself up on it the first time, and you definitely don't need to beat yourself up on it even more the second time.
Well, I was just so appreciative of you reassuring me that it would happen again. It just made my day to come over and talk about that. So Hali, today we have Rachel Hockenberger, who's the CEO of Parman Holdings out of Nashville, Tennessee. Rachel is a graduate of Liberty University with a master's in accounting. I have some great friends at Liberty University still to this day. I had an opportunity to go up there and almost became a Liberty University student. So Rachel, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. And Billy, I do have to say, I once had a boss that said, if you're not making mistakes, then you're not working.
Then
there you go.
I must be hard at it. In full disclosure, I did send Rachel some prep questions for the meeting today, and I addressed her the wrong name, and I'm so embarrassed about it, but off we go. So Parman Holdings is a diversified holdings platform. And Rachel, when we talked about this in Atlanta a few weeks ago, I thought it was very interesting, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But diversified holding platform across multiple industries, including energy and agriculture. Rachel was promoted to the CEO position from the CFO position in 2021. So, Rachel, as we mentioned, can you tell our listeners about Parman Holdings and particularly what it is that is a diversified holding platform?
So, historically, we were a petroleum distribution business. And we created the holding platform for a number of reasons, mainly all surrounding the ESOP. And we established that holding company to hold the ESOP and the unearned ESOP shares and all of the things related, and bifurcate the operating company that was in existence at the time. And once we did that, we were able to give financials on the true operating company and keep the holding company at a separated level. When we diversified, we entered into a whole new industry. We had separate credit facility, separate ERP, and everything related to running a business was separate. And when those two companies stood side by side under the holding umbrella, that's what gave us the diversified platform.
So the strategy around that, you use the word bifurcate. I do not have my dictionaries, particularly my financial dictionary. I know that's your background. Tell me a little bit about what that means. That's interesting.
Well, what we found was with a company that turned a commodity really quickly, we had many lines of credit. And when you send a new ESOP's balance sheet out and they see all of those unearned ESOP shares out there, it appears as negative equity. So we needed to come up with a way to remedy that with a solution that was logical for financial partners. And the solution that was logical that we found was moving the ESOP to a holding company separated from the operating company. So that way that operating company had its own audited financial package that expressed the true performance of the company without muddying the water with the ESOP information because it can be very robust and complex.
Well, I love the way that you've done that. As a matter of fact, we have several of the diversity holding platforms in the ESOP community. As a matter of fact, one of our considerations is how will we look at that going forward? Because we have a family of companies, and what does that look like to fold them under that holding company platform? Matter of fact, we'll probably have some more discussions about this later offline. We're going to talk about leadership today, and one of the things, Rachel, the reason we did this podcast, the reason we started the podcast, is because we wanted to bring leaders like you into the meeting room to tell your story, to talk about your journey, also the decisions that you have to make as CEO and leaders in your organization. I took a peek at a video that you did, a YouTube video with Dave Roberts, and you guys were talking about technology, and this is at the forefront of almost every conference I go to now. Technology is leading. There's AI breakout sessions, and you know that technology is on the top shelf for all conversations now. But I found it interesting what you said about technology from Parman Energy, and particularly, you said that there are a lot of companies that may not be on the cutting edge of technology, but they want you to be on the cutting edge. What is it about that sort of creates some framework for you as you are a champion of the technology piece from the CEO's position? I talked to you this a little bit about before we got started. My team has busted my chops a little bit about not being the champion for technology. So how are you championing technology at Parman Holdings?
Well, I am not the most proficient user, but I am a user of much of the technology. And I think the best way I can champion it for our people here is to try to not get in the way. From the human side of things, our CHRO, they have multiple levels of software that they use for safety and paying people and tracking people. And then for distributing product, we have multiple facets, technologies at different levels that we use to show where the trucks were, what was pumped off the trucks, and get real-time receipts back and forth. It's a necessary part of what we do. And as the world continues to turn, technology will continue to evolve. Very rapidly. And from my end, not being so financially minded that I stand in the way of the investment, but financially minded enough that I encourage the investment and try to not ever discourage the use of it.
And I think you've hit the key right there, is that sometimes we can stand in the way, particularly as executive leaders, if we're not the champion of it. In other words, we're not the one saying, hey, let's continue to explore this, to the point where we make really good decisions about what technology brings. And as Hali and I knows very well, part of the language in our culture is, what's the value proposition? What value are we bringing by onboarding this piece of technology? We are exploring wireless warehouses and all the other things that come in our industry, and we are seeing such great results. And I'll tell you, I'm just going to, go to confession here. I was the last one to get on board with the wireless warehouse, and shame on me for that, because I stood in the way of something really good in our organization. And I just didn't see the value, but our team is showing me the value over and over. And I'm sure, I can see you're nodding your head. I can tell that you're experiencing some of the same things when you see that technology coming into play. So, from technology to the human element, Rachel, in your bio, you said that you place high value on talent development. Even from talent development in technology and all the different things that you guys are involved in on the energy space and the ag space, when you place a high value on talent development, that means that you've got to do something. What are you guys doing? Give us some examples of what you're doing to develop your team at Parman Holdings.
Well, one thing, I do believe that anytime talent is developed, it's going to be customized to the individual by the mentor or the person who's doing that work. But at Parman in particular, it's a very personal topic to me, because I started with the company 19 years ago, I believe, as a temp to hire. And I had an undergrad in education at the time. And I moved to Nashville and started as a temp to hire. And a few years in, my position had adjusted a little, and the company was willing to pay for my master's degree, which is how I ended up with a master's from Liberty University. Parman paid for it. And it was an investment that they placed in me. And then along the journey, they offered some leadership classes and brought in some third parties to do specific coachings on things. And those are just some general topics. That was for me personally. But as an organization, we have a coaching culture, and it's kind of how we go to market instead of having annual reviews where by the time the annual review comes around, management has forgotten what it is that you did or did not do correctly. But we are constantly coaching and having conversations. And from the leader's perspective, yes, it's a drain on time. But from the teammates or the employees' perspective, they're kind of constantly getting cultivated. And in those same discussions, you have a lot of discussions about what do you want to do? Where do you want to be? How can we get you there? And if it's getting you there through extra training or education, then the company is willing to take part in that plan.
So, Rachel, I love that. And, when our listeners are going to go, wait a minute, no annual reviews. How did that develop? Is that something that you developed, or was that something in place when you came into the position? And tell me a little bit about how you came to that.
I would love to be able to take credit for the no annual reviews, because I was in management whenever we did the annual reviews. And I remember opening last year's annual review and looking at notes that team members had and was like, I don't know. I mean, they're the same. They're the same as they were the year before. I'm done. And, but the executive team, the members that are on the team now were in place back when the culture shifted to the coaching culture. And I mean, it really is phenomenal, because it's not all good. It's not always positive. It's the good and the bad. It's discussing things that, a team member may not enjoy doing these certain functions of their job, or how can we get you to this place that you need to be? And what it really does is kind of take the topic when there's an issue or a problem, and you have those conversations in real time. And from the company perspective, we document whatever we need to document, and having the real-time conversation, it's never a surprise. We're never coming out of left field with something that you have not remembered, because we're doing these things regularly.
Well, I think that what a great point, because one of the things that I encourage our leaders, particularly our senior leaders, when we're in a review or a conversation or coaching, when we formalize those conversations, if one of our team members hears something for the first time in that meeting, shame on you. If there was an opportunity to coach up, they should have already heard that. So well done on that. And to transition from kind of into your story, Hali, when she said cultivate, I know that Parman has got some ag in it. And I mean, when she said cultivate, my mind went straight to the cultivator. And I'm thinking that in the root word for cultivator, culture. So anyway, that's a whole nother idea. That's how my mind works. So sorry, we took a little road down Billy Lane there. So Rachel, you didn't take the normal path. In our episodes, we've had a lot of salespeople that have moved from the market side into the CEO spot. And in your bio, you moved from the CFO to the CEO spot. But quite frankly, what you've just revealed, you actually transitioned from temp to hire to CEO. And that is an incredible story. So tell me about the day maybe when you were in the temp to hire position, when you thought, you know what, I can be the CEO of this organization. Did that ever cross your mind?
I will say 19 years ago, when I was in the temp to hire role, the world was different. Being CEO of this organization was not something that I was thinking at that point in time. I mean, I vividly remember the day whenever I internally told myself, I can do this. I can do it. I want to do it. And and it was just before COVID, as the world started to fall apart. And then, leading the early days of COVID, me looking at our organization as an employee-owned company and wanting so deeply to see the success of the company for the people, not for my gain, but for the drivers, that have worked here their entire life, for the technicians, for people who were a temp to hire and maybe not really intended to do a whole bunch more than that, but looking at our team here and going, you know what, we still have so much more that we can do. And our CEO at the time, I knew that he was on a road to retirement. And my fear, which I'm sure a lot of the team thought the same, was like, who's going to take over? We're going to bring somebody in from the outside world who doesn't understand our culture and the ESOP and the fact that you are not, as a CEO, you're not there to be completely enriched on your own. You are there to make sure the shareholders can be enriched. You are there to gain wealth for all of the employee owners. I mean, there was just a defined moment where I thought, I want to see the company succeed. I want to see it so much so that I would go beyond my comfort zone in order to make sure that I was one of the pieces of the puzzle that gets it through to the next level.
Well, I will tell you that this is the very reason we started the podcast, so we can hear this story. And I'm gonna push on you a little bit here to tell us more about that for this reason. Well, first of all, COVID was a great time for you just to decide that you want to run the organization. What a great time when the world was falling apart for you to say, I'm next. I'll be next. But John Maxwell gives this really cool illustration in one of his books, and I'm not sure which. He said there was 5 frogs sitting on a log. One decided to jump off. How many frogs were left? The obvious answer is 4, but quite frankly, the real answer is 5, because just because you decided to jump off didn't mean that you did jump off. When you decided that you wanted to be a difference maker, when you decided you wanted to take up the mantle, what was your first action steps? What did that look like? Because our listeners are tuned in to the answer to this question. What did the first action steps look like in that journey?
Well, for me, it was really being able to collaborate with those who were executives and, decision makers at the company, truly understanding that collectively we are smarter than any one person is. I knew that there was so much I do not know, didn't know, wouldn't know, but if I subjected myself to everyone's understanding and, really took the time to listen and work. And that's where I was after that day and going through COVID, looking at the executive team that was in place and listening to them. They had been in place for such a long time and they had, stood the test and proven themselves. And they wanted the company to succeed as badly as I internally wanted the company to succeed. And so really, even to this day, these guys will come in and collaborate on topics which really have nothing to do with their role in the company. But I know that we think differently, we look at things differently, and somebody's going to say something that's going to be the aha moment that gets us over. And at the time, me being CFO in a world that was turning upside down, listening to what others were saying, listening to people that were responsible for sales, listening to people that were responsible and cared for our human capital really helped me to cement myself into place that I believe that I can do it. And even to this day, I know that I want their buy-in on topics. I want to talk through things with the team. I'm not the CEO who says, this is what we're going to do. Now let's move. If I ever am that assertive about a topic, they would be fearful because I try to work with them on everything. So that way their voice is heard, they're empowered to share, their opinion or their experience on the topics. And I believe it's worked for our company. It's brought us a level of success that we didn't see 5 years ago.
Well, I will tell you this, I'm very proud of the way you've done that. I was just sharing this with a young leader today. Patrick Lencioni, one of my favorite writers, wrote the book, The Advantage, and his 4 points to success were create a collaborative leadership team, create clarity around the vision for the organization, and then communicate that clarity. And then the fourth point is over communicate with clarity. And it sounds like that's what you did. And to me, Rachel, what it sounds like is you are a trust builder. When you bring a team together that collaborates, you're building trust within the organization. We had a character core meeting this past week, and we were talking about I think the topic was honesty. And I said, honesty has its bounds, but the boundaries are set by how much we're willing to trust one another. If I can't be transparent and communicate clearly, then there's some level of distrust. So sounds like you guys are building a team that trusts each other, are able to lean on each other's strengths, and I congratulate you on that. It's an incredible journey from not only the CFO to CEO, but the temp to hire to CFO to CEO, thinking about what that was like going through your mind, and then taking the actions for that. So, Rachel, just to pivot to the next question, one of the reasons that we began this podcast that we could tell stories just like yours, and how you shaped as a leader, defining moments, and what you were just talking about earlier. That moment when you said, "I believe I can do this." It really changed not only the trajectory for your personal life, but it changed the trajectory for your organization. So if you were communicating with someone who may be, in a transition or thinking about moving into or the person who's thinking about, hey, I think I can do that next thing, what would be your advice to them in stepping forward in that situation?
So a two-pronged answer. One would be that they always keep their attitude in check. It is very easy when you are in the weeds working to make assumptions or feel like, I do so much work. I am always here late. That kind of thing. I believe when you develop the true yearning to be a leader, because with good motivation, there's a part of you that you don't mind the extra work. You don't mind taking on the projects or volunteering to do things because you want to see things completed. You want to understand the puzzle, all of those things. So keeping your spirit or your attitude in check and letting everyone see the good side of you, it's having control of your mind, that kind of thing. And then on the flip side of the coin, being able to say, this is what I want to do. This is where I want to be. Now, that answer may adjust with how the company evolves or how your life changes. But I do believe I don't know is not the best answer. When someone asks you, what do you want to be when you grow up? I don't know. Well, when you're 30 and you say, I don't know, you probably want to spend a little time attempting to define that. And, I think having an answer to that, well, I'd really like to be a part of a team that leads an organization so I can be impactful. Those kind of answers, that's a good answer. I want to do this, or, I want to lead a sales organization because I'm very good at it. And because I know I can help people, become wealthy because of the, those kind of things. And so I think that's my two-prong: controlling your mind and attitude, and then also having your response, knowing today what you want to do tomorrow.
Yeah, and I love the way you frame that, particularly when our teams are listening. Your team is listening to this, our team is listening to this, and if we could give some examples of some things to say, and I'm thinking about some folks on our team saying, I can see myself doing such and such, and then how do I evolve, or how do I move towards being able to accomplish that? Because actually we want to hear that. We want to hear from our emerging leaders on what they want to do, because we're forecasting where the organization's going. We're looking at leadership bandwidth, and we want to know what the bench streak looks like in our company. So I love that. I love the way you frame that. We talk about when we onboard a new employee owner at Threaded Fasteners, and we hear them still referring to us in the third party, we will remind them that we now live in Weeville, not in Y'allville or the other companyville. We We want them to become a part of saying we, and we want to cultivate Weeville at our company. So, Rachel, I was at a leadership roundtable this week with our team, and I asked them two questions. What is it that you love about your role at our organization, and what is it that gives you heartburn? How would you answer those questions? Because, we all know that the CEO has the easiest job in town, right?
Right. Yes, of course. Well, the thing to love about the organization is we're not a huge company. We have about 200 employees, but we've been successful at what we've done. The thing to love, for me to love when I walk in this building, is the driving force toward excellence. The people that are here, they want what they do to be done and the outcome to be excellent. And from the executives down, to the newest hourly employee, you can feel that. And anytime you don't get that sense from an employee, no matter if it's an office worker or somebody that's delivering product, they're normally not a long-term fit. And that's just how it is. Because from the top down, we want the best for our customers. We want our customers to not feel let down. And it takes everybody here for that to happen. So that's the best part, is the spirit of excellence, whether somebody's working on an internal project or external deliveries of product or, selling construction and ag equipment. We want the best, and the spirit of excellence that you can sense when you're working with anybody here is really outstanding. It pushes you to be better. Like for me as a CEO, you're very challenged by the people around you because they do such a good job. And so you can't relax. You got to want to be better because they're so good.
And I love the phrasing, the spirit of excellence, because it would be different if you said the spirit of perfection, because there are too many that use perfection as their goals, and we're not going to be perfect, but we're striving for excellence, not perfection. Perfection actually can cause paralysis by analysis. We just kind of get stuck because we can't move forward because we want to be perfect. So Rachel, we're going to take a really quick break, and when we come back, we're going to ask you about the great award that your company just received at the Southeastern ESOP Association. So we'll be right back. We're with Rachel Hockenberger on the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast.
Threaded Fasteners is a 100% employee-owned company whose mission is to create value in and for the people we serve. So, if you're interested in learning more about how we develop a people-centric culture, or if you're interested in a customized fastener solution, send us an email at culture@threadedfasteners.com. That's culture@threadedfasteners.com.
All right, everyone, we're back in the meeting room with Rachel Hockenberger, CEO of Parman Holdings. Rachel, I had the privilege of being in Atlanta a couple of weeks ago and got to see you walk up on the stage and receive an award. But I can't not say that our Hali, our producer and co-host, has accepted a position with the Southeastern ESOP Association as the communications director. So congratulations to Hali.
Thank you.
And also Haley's going to pitch this over to you next.
Yeah, I want to be very clear that I'm still with Threaded Fasteners.
Oh yeah,
this is an additional role.
This is a dual role.
This is a dual role.
Okay.
I'm very excited to help with the ESOP Association and help with their communication.
As
it is something that I
wouldn't let you go anywhere.
But yes, Parman Holdings was awarded the Company of the Year by the Southeastern ESOP Association. So, Rachel, what do you think makes Parman a great place to work?
The people. I believe the people are what makes it a great place to work. The people are what makes the organization. Along with the people is the culture, obviously, that goes along with that. What we do is what we do. The commodities we sell, the tractors, the excavators, that's what we sell, or that's what we work on, all of those things. But the fantastic people here, the heart of the people, that's what makes us a great company to work for. I said it earlier. Normally, if somebody doesn't really like our people here, they're probably not a fit long term. And that's fine. They may fit somewhere else, but the people here are amazing people that are caring and want to see the best, and they connect. So the people are what makes it such an amazing place to work.
So, Rachel, having said that and really talking about culture, we kind of bring this full circle, the people, the culture, and what it is to be a part of this great organization. What do you see as the CEO's part in helping define, and not only to define it, but to defend the culture? You spoke a little bit about people not being a good fit. Is that part of you and your team defending the culture? And I'm assuming that's what it is, but what else defines the culture at Parman Holdings?
Well, I do believe that culture is defined from the top down, and I think you have to defend it aggressively. We have a fantastic chief human resource officer, and she really is the heart of the organization. I love our people. I have a passion for people, and I want to see people who may not have win now because we're an employee-owned organization. But my natural person is also a financial-minded person. So a lot of times I look at her and, seeing the heart for the people and the desire to care for people through her. And I think our executive team, we all have different strengths and weaknesses, and we rely on one another. And that's what we represent to our impact leaders, those who are actually managing the day-to-day business. And we hold them accountable, and then they hold their people accountable. And what we expect to happen is the trickle-down effect of our culture. Our team acts and behaves a certain way. We expect our teams to act and behave a certain way. And we expect the driver who's not even in the building most of the time to expect us to act and behave a certain way. So I think it's from the top down, and, the worst behavior that we'll tolerate is really what our culture is. So if we're tolerating someone who is not supportive of our brand and who's, not representing our company well, then that's who we are. And that's not who we want to be.
I love that expression. And particularly when you talked about impact leaders, we've actually just interjected a line of leaders, define them as we call them impact leaders. Hali, I'm hearing Rachel say so many things. It sounds like that she's part of our group. We use a lot of the same language. And, we call those people, Rachel, that doesn't fit our culture. We call them culture terrorists. They may be high performers, but they're not part of the behavioral standards that we set. And we want them to leave. We want to help make them available to the market. I love the shout out for Julie Pomeroy. As a matter of fact, that's who I sent the email questions to by mistake when I sent Rachel the questions for today. But I met Julie, and I can tell Julie has a heart to serve the people at Parman Holdings, and a credit to your leadership and further developing your staff to be that collaborative machine. I really hear a lot of collaboration in the things that you say. So we've got to hear a little bit about how you lead, Rachel. And if we were to pull somebody out of the hallway and say, tell us about Rachel and her leadership style, what would they say about you?
Well, I have to confess that when I read that question, I thought, what would they say about me? So then I asked a couple people that I knew were reliable sources because I wanted to see what they would say. So the president of one of our operating companies, who was previously the chief operating officer years ago, he's a no-nonsense fella. Completely. And so I asked him via Teams message, how would you describe me? And he said, decisive and determined. And so I was like, you know what, that is true. Because I think I do not know another way than to keep moving. Stopping and just thinking about it is not an option for me. And then a young lady who's over our sales operations, who has a story similar to mine, she said, you are empowering. And I do believe that. And I think that goes back to the collaboration point, that I only know so much. But if I work with this group of people, then collectively I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be a lot better with all of our input in there. And so I do agree. I think I do strive to be that type of leader for our people. And I would want them to be that type of leader for their people. Help, be decisive, be determined, be empowering. Don't hold all the power for yourself. That's only going to hurt the company and the shareholders in the long term.
Just had a meeting before coming over to the podcast today, and we were talking about this very subject about empowering and how we are looking for people to plug and play at our organization, and how quickly we empower them is defining for our organization. John Maxwell talks about the law of attraction. When word gets out that you're empowering people, that you're building leaders, that you're investing in people's trajectory, you become a more attractive employer, and people begin seeking you out instead of you looking for team members. They actually start looking for you. Hali?
So one of the things that we talk about a lot on the podcast is that the search for knowledge and the thirst for knowledge. Actually, when we were at the ESOP Association, one of our ESOP advocates actually told us that a quote that her grandfather always told her: if you're not hungry for knowledge, you're too full of yourself. So I wanted to ask you, what are you reading these days? If it's a leadership book, or just what are you reading?
So much like Billy, one of my favorite authors is Patrick Lencioni. I've read every book, and I know you can't see it back there, but on that shelf are all of his books. And my team, after this podcast today, we're going offsite for an executive offsite and strategic planning event. And typically we will distribute a text or something to read and kind of come in and discuss at the end, little light talking. And so this year, the book that was selected was The Motive. And so The Motive by Patrick Lencioni, and the team has read it, and we have not discussed the book. We're going to do that tomorrow. But what's really great about The Motive is, I'm a CEO already. These guys are already executives. Most of them are not looking for a new gig anywhere else. But it was more of, are our motives good? And as we raise up the next generation of leaders here, how can we make sure that they understand the importance of having the right motivation, the importance of keeping the reason why you're doing something at the forefront, and you don't get lost in glory or whatever, they think being executive means. So that's where we are, The Motive.
I love The Motive, and it's it's one of those, and for those not familiar with Patrick Lencioni's writing, some of his writings come in a fable form. And it's really a story. It's an easy read. The Motive, you could probably, if you're a good reader, you could probably read it in an evening, but it took me a couple of days. But I really like how it drills into the challenge of what is the motivation behind leadership. And when we start talking about servant leadership, and I can hear that in the way you lead, servant leadership, about serving the people around us instead of being served. And incredible, great. That's a great book, and I love that. Any of the Patrick Lencioni books, we've already mentioned two of them today: The Advantage and The Motive. Rachel, this is the last question that we ask to every leader that we bring on to the podcast. And your emerging leaders, your team will be listening to this, so thinking about speaking directly to them. If there was an emerging leader in the meeting room with us today, and they were considering, their own leadership journey, what advice would you give them? This is something you can start today to begin your journey in leadership.
Well, I would tell them today to start looking at the team around them and be able to formulate what it is that I would like to do. Because the leaders here cannot help you to get to a place if you don't know the place. We can't make up the place for you. But if you came in and said, hey, I would love to run sales operations. That's a huge job, and it's complex, and I love the idea of it. I love working so in depth with people. We can work on how to get you to a place like that. We can't get you somewhere if you do not know where you want to be.
I encourage all of the leaders to go back and re-listen to this podcast. I think that Rachel has laid out several things, including having the plan. When we talked about emerging leaders earlier, and you said, when you come to them and say, "Hey, what would you like to do?" I don't know is not a good answer. So when you're in that leadership mindset of, I want to do something, I want to be a part of this organization, I think that's a great counsel is for them or any of us to begin formulating what that might look like, because I do believe that leaders will come to those who are starting to stand out, who are starting to make a difference, making themselves known in the organization. And then you have someone like Rachel or their leadership team that comes to you and say, "Hey, we see something in you. What do you want to do with your career?" Have 2 or 3 of those bullet points. Great advice. Rachel, I'll tell you this. If somebody pulled me in just on the little bit that we've got to know each other and said, "What's Rachel like as a leader?" Here's what I would tell you, that you're genuine. What you see is what you get. I appreciate the way that you've handled this interview. We talked a little bit about this off air. Not very many people that come on the podcast don't refer to their notes, and I'm able to see your notes, and knowing that you're not referring to them tells me that you genuinely care for your people. You genuinely enjoy what you're doing, and I can't thank you enough for taking a few minutes to join us on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been exciting to work with both of you and help spread, the news of leadership and help grow people up, to lead our organizations.
All right. Well, Rachel, thank you again. And Hali and I will be right back with some closing thoughts. All right, Hali, what a great episode today. Interview with Rachel Hockenberger. She is the CEO of Parman Holdings Company. Man, Rachel just was dropping a lot of information. I'm trying to decide which one were my takeaways, so I'm going to let you do it first.
I'm the guinea pig today?
Yep.
Okay. So Rachel talked about kind of what a great employee looks like, but she also talked about what a not so great culture fit is. And it just reminded me of, I don't know who has said this, but your company's culture is only as strong as the worst behavior that you tolerate. And that's kind of in that same realm that we were talking about.
And I love the way that she said that what she loved about her job was the coming to work and seeing the spirit of excellence on the team. And, Rachel comes across as a genuine leader, and striving for excellence is not a stretch at all to see as a result for Parman Holdings with her at the helm. Hali, what's your last takeaway?
I am really impressed with how genuine she came across as. And you can see that in the way that she was just so comfortable talking about not only herself, but her team. And like you mentioned on the podcast, she had no notes. And that's often when we see that, we know somebody who's just genuine and authentic in the way that they communicate.
And I love the word authentic. She talked about empowering. She talked about impact leaders. She even gave a shout out to her CHRO. And then the last thing, just real quick, she talked about what for emerging leaders, have a plan, formulate a plan, be ready when someone comes and asks what you want to do. So great job today. Just love having her on the podcast. And I think it's going to be for her team and for our team listening today really puts in some steps for your stepping in the direction of leadership. So, Hali, till we meet again, tighten up.
Tighten up. Thank you for joining the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership podcast, brought to you by the employee owners of Threaded Fasteners. If you enjoyed our conversation, please subscribe to, rate, and review the Nuts and Bolts of Leadership wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Do you have a leadership story to tell or a question to ask? Email us at podcast@threadedfasteners.com. That's podcast@threadedfasteners.com. This show is made possible by our family at Threaded Fasteners, Inc. Our mission is to create value in and for the people we serve. Interested in learning more about TFI and how we create value in our team, in our communities, and in our customers? Visit threadedfasteners.com. Thank you again for listening. I'm your co-host and producer, Hali Gibson.
And I'm your host, Billy Duren.
This show is edited and produced by Johnny Glenn and our friends at Deep Fried Studios.